I actually would like to introduce our panel, and we'll get into some of the questions about AI and machine learning. We'll take we'll break this into a couple of rounds where we have some questions that we've already prepared, and then we may have a break in the middle, and then after this, actually, we'll open it up a bit and invite some questions from all of you. Without further ado, I'm going to get the names right, and I'll try and pronounce them correctly. So I'd like to invite up Ariel Leventhal from K-Health. Okay, so Chamiel, yeah, here from Taboola, Orna from Waze, Amir from Waze, and Michal Aharon from Yahoo, my former alma mater. So please join me in giving a warm round of applause to our 4 panelists. So we can get to know our panelists. I wanted to start just by asking each of you, and we'll just go, we'll start with Michal. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you got into data science leadership.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Michal Aharon. Something about my background. I have a PhD from the Chamiel in signal processing and data analytics. I then worked in HP Labs for about 5 years, and then moved to Yahoo about 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, I don't remember. About 4.5 or 5 years ago, I started leading the digital advertising team, science team. We partner with an engineering team here in Tel Aviv, and we actually own together a very large advertising product of Yahoo. It's called Gemini Native. It's a very large product. We advertise in tens of thousands of different sections, in different properties of Yahoo and also third-party sites. And my team does all the science perspective aspect of the project. So we do really interesting stuff. Click prediction is a very good example. Budget pacing, things like this are our day-to-day work.
Hi, my name is Orna Amir, and I work at Waze. I lead the data science and analytics group there. In terms of my background, I grew up in the US, and I started with my career with a PhD in applied mathematics. And then I came to Israel. I had some time in academics, and then started working in industry, and basically started managing teams quite quickly. Basically, it wasn't called data science when I started doing it. It was called other things, algorithm development, and I've worked in a variety of industries, in medical devices, pharma, ad tech, and now at Waze. And my group at Waze does a real wide variety of work. We do work that's more on the analytics side, creating data, finding insights, and helping to develop the product, and also machine learning models. For example, the speed limits you see in Waze today was developed in my group, and there's a wide range of other things as well. So, thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chamiel. I work for Taboola. I head the algorithm group there. My background is I started off as a software engineer, then I thought it was a good idea to do a PhD, so I went to Australia and did a PhD in university in Australia. And then when I came back, I found Taboola, Taboola found me, and that was 7.5 years ago, something like that. So I started off as an engineer, then I established a team, which then became a group of a few teams, and here we are. Taboola does content discovery, recommendations for other things on the web that you may like. It roughly split to organic recommendations, which are other articles from the same website that you may like watching, and sponsor content, which is more advertising, actually. Then in the group we do. So a lot of the work other people mentioned, the click-through rate prediction, conversion rate prediction, and other things we got to do with the personalization on the web. And that's that.
I have my own.
That's cheating.
I'm Ariel. I sort of managed to skip the academic part of my career. I jumped to industry immediately. But my professional background is in computational linguistics. Maybe 12 or 13 years ago, I joined a company called Fraud Sciences to lead the algorithmic team and then eventually the R&D group. It was then sold to PayPal, eBay, and I moved to PayPal to work on their risk models. The fact that the company was sold allowed me to do other stuff. I spent the last 8 years being a therapist and like a masseur and a Chinese medicine practitioner. I was in the middle of my internship in a Chinese hospital in the middle of nowhere when I got a call from the then week-old or 2 weeks old K-Health to ask if I want to have some fun with NLPing medical records. And yada, yada, yada. A year and a bit later, I manage a group of 30-something engineers, researchers, and doctors in K-Health, and we're building a medical dialogue based on models of historical interactions between patients and doctors.
Many of us have spent a lot of time this past year and change hiring. So this is the first question I want to start with, and actually I want to start with Orna about this. What specific skills are you looking for when you're looking for a data scientist? So to describe a little bit about the skills and about your hiring process as a hiring manager.
Okay, so the hiring process, I guess, in every country is company is unique. Google has a long process which we're actually trying to reduce in time. But basically what I look for in a data scientist is, first of all, a connection to a product, a love for data and passion. So, are people excited about doing something with Waze's data? I think people should, kind of be like, yes, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I want to see that they're excited and passionate about the work. I definitely want to see that they have communication skills. This is really important since I think data science is kind of a junction. You can't do it alone. You're always working, you're working with product, you're working with engineers, you're working with a lot of different functions in the company. So I think communication is a skill that's hard to compromise on. And I'm looking for, a good mix of, experience in statistics, understanding of statistical concepts, and some algorithmic understanding. And, machine learning is always a plus. So.
Okay. Do others want to react and add your own comments about what are you guys looking for when you're looking for a data scientist? Yeah.
So the DNA in the group is that we don't split data science and algorithm engineering so much. So we're actually looking for people who are, from the professional perspective, we're looking for people who are like two-headed beasts, who are both data scientists and machine learning analysis and statistics, but also they're not afraid of writing code in production, and actually they like it. And since it's really difficult to find people who are really, really great in both, then we are actually looking for people who are great in one and good in the other and want to get better in the other too. And we test the two things, and we want to see if they are, where do they stand with respect to what I said just now. And in that process, we look at all sorts of different things. Definitely communication skills, like Orna said, absolutely. There are people who are, a lot of people, when you ask them what you're looking for, they say, we're looking for a job that will allow me to solve problems, interesting problems. So you want to see that they're also relentless about it. We all know that in data science, it's like you got to use a lot of perseverance to be able to succeed, to know how to see the 80-20, how to not to get too confused by like something that might not work. So we're looking for people who are with those skills, that they will push forward, that are passionate about it, and that they will not get too, let's say, perfectionist about their solutions, and so they can deliver, and 50 other things.
And 50 other things. Okay. All right. So maybe the next question will focus on, once you've hired somebody, how you actually train a data scientist to work in your space. So sometimes we find, let's call him or her a software engineer who doesn't know much about statistics or machine learning, or sometimes we find a brilliant statistician who doesn't know much about engineering, programming. Do any of you have a reaction to how do you take, if you can't find a two-headed beast, how do you take a one-headed beast and turn them into a two-headed beast?
So I guess I can share this with you as well, but not a lot of people have a background in digital advertising, right? So everyone is probably, we do the proper introduction and the proper training. We have, so it's either, it can be a lot of, in the first few days or weeks, so people are learning the subject. It's definitely not enough, they're not becoming experts, but they know what they're working and they know the team mission. And in general, we do try to identify what this person is good at and to give him a project that he is likely to succeed in, something that meet either his prior experience or expertise or knowledge or something, so that he can feel that he can contribute and hopefully succeed in this project and actually bring it to a successful launch. And also during this process, he learns a lot about the other stuff, about how things are working, what is, how do you deploy your code, how do you test it, what is all the process of actually ramping up an experiment and looking at the result and measuring the outcome. So
when we started, we had quite a huge challenge. We were very ambitious with how fast we wanted to go. We wanted to have a few very, very substantial models, NLP models and deep learning models ready quite quickly. We didn't have enough street cred to sort of recruit let's say the very experienced researchers. And the market was very hard. It's almost impossible to find good, experienced, available algorithmic engineers or data scientists, especially for a small company. So what we did was to hire smart, talented engineers with some affiliation or some tendencies towards machine learning, and I paired each one of the researchers with someone from academia, with a leading researcher, either a PhD or even a professor that is specializing in a specific field. We try to find the people who were the most qualified for that. And we built a team that was sort of a researcher and a supervisor, in a sense. And we had our professors and PhDs sort of help our researchers grow as though they were a master students of that field, and it has worked very successfully. We've been doing it for a year, and we've done it in 4 different cases, and it has helped us reach things faster and helped our researchers grow substantially.
So Ariel, you spoke about pairs of people as like a secret formula for success. Are there other models where I need 3 people or I need this blend of skills? Can you talk about like what the dream team is for a AI or machine learning feature?
I have an answer to the previous question,
okay.
Actually.
All right.
But in terms of training and getting people on board, we kind of have a buddy system. It's not an academic, but it's more like a more senior person on the team, which also gives them kind of a leadership role and gives them kind of a stretch opportunity. So we found that really helps. We have like a whole plan of, here are the things you need to learn and the different skills you need to gain. So if it's someone that, let's say, has a lot of, background in statistics, but doesn't know SQL, they'll sit down for a week and, and learn SQL and then keep on going. So we try to kind of fill that gap. In general, we've been doing like a training session for the entire group, where we're all, doing together like an online course, and we sit together and we stop and we answer questions. So we try to kind of build up the team. We have a few more senior people and a lot of junior people, so that's kind of our way internally to bring up the level of, statistics and machine learning in the group.
You ask about pairing people together. So I guess it's for me it's relatively trivial. There are several properties that should be there in order to make a project successful. So one is, of course, a very good idea, an algorithmic design that is well formed, and definitely the knowledge that is required, and then also the software skills and the knowledge of how to deploy. So it sometimes one person can establish most. It's almost never that one person does all the way by himself, but sometimes it can fulfill a major part of it, but a lot of time we do couple someone that is more experienced in the algorithmic part and someone that may help him in the software and the design implementation. We also work with an engineering team in Tel Aviv. We have a very good collaboration with them, so a lot of time we split the work between the two teams. So.
You want to talk about the dream team thing?
The dream team.
Okay.
Who is your dream team?
Right. Looking for dream team, building ones, I think. Okay, so this is again relevant for our case where we like to take things end to end. So I think it sounds a little bit similar to the case you just heard, where we like to push things to online experimentation quite quickly. So we don't like to, in the recommendation system, there is an issue that there is, let's say, mild correlation between offline results and online results. And maybe the direction will be right. Actually, when we do offline analysis, then if it's not losing, then we'll try it in an A/B test. That's kind of the idea. And so that's why we need a team that can get to a place where they deliver an online experimentation, which means production code. Maybe it doesn't have to be as scalable as the real one for something that will be fully rolled out, but it needs to be in production. So it's very rough, but like roughly we try to have a team which is not too big, not too small, so like let's say 5 to 7 people, and that we will have one person who is like more experienced from the machine learning perspective, one person who is more experienced from the algorithmic, from the engineering perspective, or the big data engineering perspective, stuff like that. And the rest of the team should be people who are like algorithm engineers who can do both in a reasonable way. Maybe they have certain traits, and that enables us to do this cycle of thinking of ideas and then doing some analysis offline, maybe writing some models and trying them online in a real live experiment. That's dreamy enough, I don't know.
Yeah, I think when we've done this at Intuit and some of our most successful initiatives, we had something like 1 or 2 data scientists with 3 or 4 engineers, some front-end engineers, some back-end engineers, half of a designer and half of a product manager, and maybe half of a DevOps person. And we specialize by the roles, maybe because we're a big company, but when you look at data science, it's actually a small part of the overall machine learning workflow. So many companies are so focused on, oh, there's a secret formula for data science, but actually it's one of the hardest things to find can be finding a product manager who knows how to talk to data scientists and work with them. This is maybe even more difficult to find than a good algorithm engineer or data scientist.
The formula that we've found to work best, at least in my past experience and now in K, is that when you inject domain knowledge into a research process, you get better and much faster results. And so what we did is to create a large professional group of doctors that are part-time and full-time part of K. We train them to have some technical and statistical understanding. And basically our atomic unit for everything is a doctor and someone else. So we will have a doctor and a product manager, a doctor and a QA engineer, a doctor and a researcher, a doctor and a dev engineer, working together on a project. And this gets us faster, and this is true to the largest extent when we're talking about research. So I try to physically force them to sit at the same table look at the data together, take ownership over the project together, and this is how the smallest unit operates in K. Obviously, when it's a larger project, then we combine a few of those units together into something larger.
Okay, so speaking of managing projects, there are many trendy methodologies for estimating and scoping and managing the work we do, whether it's Agile or Scrum or Kanban, or actually even Waterfall has become popular again these days. Which methodologies do you use? Which methodologies do you hate? Share with us. I'd like to hear actually this one maybe for all four of you. Tell me how you guys manage the work you do.
Yeah, the fun question about processes and agility. So we do something which is a form of Kanban. Okay, it's a mild Kanban, let's say. But the important part, besides the name, is that it's that we strive for continuous deployment, continuous integration, continuous deployment. So we try to, as soon as someone comes up, and that also goes hand in hand with the idea of going on to online experimentation, because if you drop a version every 2 weeks, then it's going to slow you down. So we try to build systems which allow us, every engineer, data scientist, to deploy stuff into production and break production if it's needed, if it's required to understand how robust it is, then to do it continuously. That's the concept. And then the cycle we thought about is weekly cycle. So we try to think about it as weekly cycles, small iterations. Of course, some projects, especially bigger resource projects, they take much longer. Some of them can be broken down into smaller chunks. Some of them can't, and it's a reality, and you need to accept it. So we need to know how to identify it. The challenge is not to force the too quickly agile work on something which is not suitable for. So to know to take a step back when you know that there is a big research project that needs a little bit of take a step back and let's see how it evolves. That's the general idea.
So I think we definitely have a blend of different methodologies. Part of the work that we do connects to the kind of a scrum that happens every few weeks. So it's related to the client. The client is released every 3 weeks. So we have to connect to that in terms of, especially defining KPIs and things that are actually things that need to be added to the application so that we can measure them down the line. So that's one form of work. The other form is research, and that doesn't work in that way at all. In terms of organizing the research, it's kind of sad to say, but I organize it in an Excel. Surprise.
So more waterfall and Gantt and that kind of stuff?
Well, so that doesn't quite work either. So basically what I've been doing is trying once a year to really focus on thinking strategically, doing a lot of brainstorming with my team, with the product managers, and making a plan for the year with the knowledge that we're going to have to be flexible. Like this, part of it will happen, part of it won't, part of it that isn't there is going to be there. So it's basically a balance of like a year-long plan and then kind of quarterly reviews of what's going on there. And a lot of the things that are research are our initiative. So one of the things that's important for me is that we're not just doing do this for us, because I think a lot of the value of data science comes from creativity and actually saying, hey, there's something really cool we can learn here. And that has to come from us. So it's also making the time for that to happen and freeing people's time up. Okay, now there's a little bit less pressure from the client team. Why don't you work on this now? So all of the above. Okay.
So I cannot agree more with Orna specifically about the research stuff that you described. First, it's very tough to manage research in general because many of the projects are very long term and can take easily more than a quarter or two. So we have to take it into account. We do have a quarterly process, meaning setting goals and then following over their achievements. I believe around 80 or 90% of the projects that we do. Okay, I'm happy because I was afraid that it may fall. So I believe about 80 or 90% of the projects that we do comes from us, from creativity, because we know the data. The only ask that we are actually get from outside is bring us more money. That's easy in advertising, right? So, and because we know the data and we have the experimentation and the experimental experimentation environment, then we can we have the knowledge to try and accomplish this. Everyone in his and sometimes we start by saying, okay, we want to do something, we want to accomplish something. That's the first goal would be some high level. It won't be optimal. It's okay, it will do maybe not the 80-20, but at least the 30% of or 60% of the work. And then by doing so, we can easily identify, okay, this could be improved and that could be improved. And because improvement, as Gil said before, is so easily measured when you have online experimentation, so easily ramped up, then the feedback that you get on every such idea is relatively quick and immediate.
And do you switch when you go from this big idea that's uncertain and it's hard to measure, when you get into the A/B testing or this sort of iterative, then you actually switch methodologies, or?
No, no. It's we start with something. We do the end-to-end project. So we get a project. We find a solution, or not necessarily a solution, but maybe an improvement. We try it out. If it works, that's excellent. We just launch it to production immediately. If not, then we try to see why. What were the initial assumptions that made us invest time in it and just weren't there? Like, why? So sometimes it's just bugs, because these are very complicated systems. And sometimes maybe assumptions that we thought are valid are not as we thought. And then we say, okay, we at least learned something. One more thing, and the 10% that is coming from outside the team. For example, Yahoo is launching a new product to the advertisers, and they need a click prediction for a new type of ads. Then that's the 10% that we're saying, okay, that's what we need from you, and we definitely address it, and we know the LOE when we should actually launch this project. We do something that is sufficiently good, relatively quick, because it's important for other parts in the company, but then it starts to be ours, and then we can further improve it on our own time and using nice and cool ideas that come afterwards.
Okay. And Ariel?
It's basically an average of what's been said. I will add that what I find most challenging is managing long-term projects where there is basically nothing. With existing projects, there is a framework, people know what to expect, they've already done something like that before, and it's easier to manage. With long-term projects, my probably best trick is to almost artificially or forcefully create small applicative milestones that relate to the research progress that is made in each one of the long-term research projects. Meaning, not necessarily create it in stages, because sometimes it's impossible to create an application every quarter, but try to guide our researchers into creating something that does even something small inside the company. Mm-hmm. Like share where they are with us in an applicative way, if that makes sense.
As a way of demonstrating progress or visibility.
And getting responses, and getting them to face reality a bit. Mm-hmm. And deal with something that has some correlation to the real world, and this is they already know when I approach them in a certain way that I'm going to drop a small applicative project on them and cut the research. But this is something that you need to do, especially in a small company when you're doing long-term research. You can't afford for them to get lost in endless research.
Okay.
I'd like to add something that relates to the last point and also relates to this long research projects which are really impossible to manage because who knows when you're gonna find a neuron that explains click-through rate. We're still looking, and I think there is something we do which is what I would like to share. We meet once a week with the entire group, and we do. Like we take some of the teams. We can't talk about the work of all the teams, and we choose one thing that the team is doing. Someone from the team presents it, and then they describe where the project stands. Especially if it's a research project, they describe where the project stands. They show some graphs, show some information. They get some feedbacks, and there's a few merits to doing that, even if it's half cooked. Okay, it's a safe environment. No one's defending a thesis, and so it could be an engineering project, could be a research project. Both can be a long term. By the way, there could be an engineering project which could take a long time too, and also difficult to break it into pieces. But just to get like a pulse of where do we stand with this project, and then you get some feedback. And also when you prepare, so the feedback is very important for the entire group, and maybe someone is working on something related. And also, when you prepare that, when an engineer prepares whatever 4 or 5 slides, then it is representable. So they check themselves. And a lot of the times they discover things about the project that they haven't discovered before because they got their heads above the water and they need to look at it a little bit from an outside perspective. So that's a trick for keeping research projects going.
And so each team or each person ends up having to do this once a quarter,
I'll count later, but it's every once in a while, unless someone really doesn't want to talk, but everybody does. They get to speak to the group, which they know, and that's where they live. But they get to challenge the group and not even challenge, just get feedback and have a chat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this leads into another question we can talk about, which is around developing individuals on your team. And this relates to data scientists. This relates to engineers. As a leader or a manager, this relates to any employee on your team. How do you think about as a manager, creating opportunities for each employee to develop and grow themselves? Are there specific things that you like to do over a long term in terms of somebody's career to help them to develop and grow? Michal?
Okay, so I think like many other, specifically American companies, we have levels, I'm not sure, levels that are well defined. Everyone knows where he can be promoted to, what is the next level, what are the requirements in order to get this promotion for the next level. We have levels that relate to research scientists and others that relates to research engineers. That's more or less the people in my team. In general company, we also, the same levels are defined also for software engineer, PMs, and actually every role so you can definitely promote in your own role. You don't have to become a manager in order to be in a very high level in the company, which makes it great because it's also, you can always ask the employee, where do you find yourself in the next year or in the next 3 years? And if science is what interests the employee, then definitely and if he's of course good at it, then it's definitely an area that he can promote in without having to switch roles. Also, we can think together, okay, in order to get there, what are the types of projects that you should invest in order that will allow you to make this promotion. And we think together and say, okay, in order to move to this level, we have to do that kind of an impact. Where do you think we can do it in? And I think that this also motivates a lot. specific employee to know, okay, I have my way, I know where I'm going to, that's the project that I take in order to reach to a certain stage, and I think it helps in the...
And so how much of this is coming just from the employee, how much is coming just from you, and how much of it is a conversation?
So we talk about it. We definitely talk about it. Sometimes, if it's a new hire, I just tell him about the process, and a lot of time it's not relevant in the first 6 months or 1 year. But then after a year or two, I'm saying, okay, what do you think about promotion? Where do you find yourself? Do you want to be promoted to the next level in your current role? Maybe you prefer to move to a different role, and that's also fine. And then we think together, if this is where you want to be, what are the things that you should work on in order that will allow you to accomplish it.
Okay.
So I think it's very similar in Google. So also we have job ladders and levels, and it's very intensive in terms of doing performance evaluations, which we do twice a year. But I think it's really important in terms of management, because you really do have this dedicated time twice a year to really look back. I think it's really important. I invest a lot of time in it because I do think it helps a person to develop, kind of see where they're at. Also to kind of align my perception of them with their perception of themselves, and a lot of times it's not the same. So I see them in one light and they see themselves in a different place, and I think it's really important to actually verbalize that. And then the person says, well, I should be managing a team now, or I should be doing this, and you're like, well, I don't think so, and this is why. And I think that's really healthy, because in order to develop, you need to see what are the places that you're lacking. So I think this kind of framework of twice a year really gives that opportunity. And I think it's really important to give stretch opportunities. So in Google, there's also, you can stay on the professional ladder. You don't need to become a manager to progress. But definitely leadership is expected in terms of progressing. So you need to develop both professionally on the technical side and in leadership. And leadership could be being a tech lead. It could be, owning a large project. So there are a lot of different channels, and I agree also with what you were saying. You have to find the projects. Like maybe somebody was, just the company really needed some very intensive engineering work and they haven't done any kind of modeling. So I know that now I need to balance that off. In the next half year, I need to make sure that they do have a project which grows them in that side as well. So it's a lot of balancing, a lot of talking, and a lot of just keeping an eye out. Like, okay, we need to close technical debt. I need someone to manage that process here. This person can grow from that. So it's kind of just seeing the opportunities and giving them to people, being aware of that.
So you guys talking a lot about impact. I think impact is a huge part in empowering people. So it could be impact on other people in the organization. So if you lead a project, and if you're not a manager but you lead a project, or you write an infrastructure which a lot of people use, then that's a very empowering thing, and that's something that people like the people who do that, people look up to them, and people actually want to become ones like that. So they want it could be an algorithmic framework that does whatever, gives you an insight into how the model performs. It could be something in big data processing. Could be a lot of things. But once it has impact even outside the group, then it's a very empowering thing. I think it's a sort of a tool for growth for people, even outside the official titles. And the other thing is the impact on the product itself, which everybody can have impact on the product itself. They write features that get into production and they do something useful. But still, once people get into bigger projects and lead bigger projects, then the impact becomes bigger. They can measure it. They get a lot out of it. The other thing which is worth mentioning which is a little bit different than the impact conversation, is about growth in professionally, like learning about new things. So another thing which we do weekly is we do a knowledge share where someone prepares a talk. It could be in anything. It could be like a review of a conference they saw online. It could be a lot of things, and doesn't have to be related to what we do. It can be not related at all to what we do, but it could be. something that is interesting for the speaker, and they get into a new field, they research it a bit, and they're encouraged to do that, and then they present it. It's also a very nice and empowering experience for them. It's a smaller resolution sort of empowerment than the big impact things, but I think it's also it's something which happens every week, and people can get into this habit of talking in front of people, learning new areas, and that helps them grow as well.
I'll follow up quickly on impact. We're still young enough and small enough for impact to be the main driving force behind how people feel about themselves and how they grow. I will just add that we are privileged to have a domain that makes the impact even a bit more emotional. We try to share stories, feedbacks, and so on from our users, and having a medical system makes it easy for people to feel that they are contributing something substantial, especially when it's still a small group.
Okay, I think we'll do one more question, and then we're going to take a short break, and then we can do some questions from the audience. So the last question I want to ask you guys is around what advice you would give, and maybe we'll come this way. We'll start with Ariel. What advice would you give? Imagine somebody out here is an aspiring data science manager or a machine learning leader. What advice would you give them so to prepare themselves so they could be most successful in that career?
As a manager?
As a manager or as a leader, like what advice would you give to a younger, earlier career who really thinks they want to go on this track?
I really liked having the time to think about the questions until they got to me. I'll try and come up with something. I would say what the quality that I found the most useful in the last couple of years is sort of dynamic creativity. The ability to deal with many different kinds of research, kinds of processes, kinds of people, with the incredible challenges of data sciences and the availability of experienced researchers. You basically need to improvise all the time and identify opportunities, find that one person might be qualified to do that and move them there quickly, pair this one with this one. It's an ongoing game of
optimization.
I want to say something with drones, but I couldn't find a suitable pun. So for me, I think creative management, agile management, dynamic management is the key to getting things done fast and well.
So I had a little bit of time to think. And I think that to me, when you want to get into leadership, I think it's really important, and it's actually relevant to all leaderships, also more senior ones, is to always to get excited. If you get excited with your team, then it's 90% of the work. Okay, they will look up to you. They already probably do look up to you, and they will probably get excited with you. Yeah, I think that's a major part of it. It's more important than being organized. It's more important than being really good technically. It's about being it's I want to say inspirational. It sounds a little bit out there, but I think the action of getting excited about things is really important when you want to lead.
I think it has a lot to do with ownership. So I think there are a lot of aspects to management. I think there's a whole people aspect of, mentoring, helping people grow. And I think that's a big part of it. And also kind of the leadership part of just pushing things forward and taking ownership and not being afraid to push your limits, not being afraid to take ownership of another part, even though it's not exactly data science or it's not exactly this, but it's essential to get things done. So I think the key to good management is being able to move things in an organization, or even in something small. If you're not starting to move an organization, you're starting to move something within your team. And then maybe you're starting to move something within your group. So I think, first of all, ownership, the ability to kind of open up and take ownership. I think it's important to see if you like managing before you decide to go on that path, just because it is a way to kind of progress. I think I would suggest taking stretch opportunities. So, maybe you can mentor someone on a project and see if you like that. Maybe, you don't like it. Maybe it's annoying. But maybe it's amazing and you feel like, wow, I've helped this person learn something new and you love it. So that's one thing I would try. I would suggest taking ownership for a project which is meaningful, even if it is, again, a bit of a pain because you need to do a lot of things that aren't your job, so and so. So I would try it out, give it a try, even if it's not official. I think a lot of becoming a manager is just doing it. Like, it's more doing than thinking. So try to find those stretch opportunities that let you practice those skills. See if you like them. And if you do, keep on doing it until there's an opportunity and then become a manager.
So I actually agree with all the three skills, but I have to find a new one. And so let me focus on the research part. You're talking about managing research. So I believe that it's very, very easy. The temptation, specifically in a team like us, it's sometimes tempting to find quick and dirty solutions. And sometimes it's necessary, but I really like, and specifically because we see ourselves as a research team, so we really value the aspect of research, which means that this is something that I really ask from everyone who come up with an idea to prove his assumption using the data, either use simulation in order to prove that something works as he wanted to work. Like, don't try it out externally before you validated that it has the proper and either mathematical foundation, either algorithmic foundation, but it has to be good. I think it's also good for the team in general to feel that they are doing qualitative stuff.
Can I add something small?
Please.
Cool. So I think the other thing which is important when you get into leadership, if you're into it, is to learn to let go. So when you are an individual contributor, okay, then we all been there, yeah. Then it's on you, okay, and you develop the code, you write it, you put it in production, you analyze it, whatever. But once you start leading people, then you need to learn to let go. You need to learn to help them succeed, or actually want them to succeed. Not every manager, I think, is even aware of that. That's their job, to get the team to succeed. And by that, you need to sometimes let them do the work, let them make mistakes, and not always think about what you're not doing, what the certain maybe very cool stuff that they maybe doing. They should be let to do quietly without over mentoring them. So letting go.
And Gil, if I can just add to that, I think sometimes that also not only means letting go to let them succeed, sometimes it means letting go to let them fail. The key is, can you find a way for them to fail in a small or controlled way, like not on the most mission critical thing, but sometimes along making the mistakes. This is actually how the team learns and the team advances and then gets one step backward, but 3 steps forward.
Yeah, to make nice mistakes.
Yeah, nice mistakes. Okay. I'd love to take a few questions. We probably only have about 15 minutes, but we'd just love to hear what's on your mind. Okay.
Yeah, this works. Hi, Ohad. I'm an analytics group leader at Clalit Research, and I wanted to ask how you manage to balance the management aspects and the professional development aspects in your work. How do you manage to for yourself? How do you manage to make time to actually sit down and code?
So I code much less. Okay, it's a reality, and I think there's a thing with the manager. I think it's a good thing to have in a manager that would want to code more and want to get more involved in stuff, but I can't do that. I think so. It's impossible to remain the same hands-on as you were before. It's just impossible to do that, and that's life. You will sacrifice other things, and that's how it's going to be. So balancing them is, I think, for me, it's choosing a specific project that I want to be more involved in. So maybe one which I'm technically involved in some level, even coding, and another one which I'm more involved in the technical leadership. And for the rest, I would let other people handle. and then I leave myself enough breathing room to do my management stuff and try to go to sleep before 2 a.m.
It's a very difficult problem and frustrating because it's hard to let go of the technical side sometimes. Hackathons, I think, are great. So have like a few hackathons a year, and then you have 1 day of pleasure because you're not a manager at all. You just get to code and like have a lot of fun. So I recommend that, but that's not a scalable solution. It's more just fun. I think it's also kind of like Gil said, is like choose a project that you're involved in as an advisor, but very intensely. I think it really depends on how many people you're managing. When I was managing 5 people, then I think I was doing 20 to 30% hands-on work, and that was fine. Now I have a group of 22 people, and it's impossible. So sometimes it's important for me. I'll pick a very small project, which is important for me, but not urgent for anybody, and I'll try to devote time to it. But you have to be realistic. Like, okay, but this month I have to do performance reviews for my entire team. This is not going to happen this month. So it's kind of just trying to balance it. Finding little things that you can do and keep like remove the rust occasionally, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And once the team is smaller, it's much easier to get to it. In my case, I actually grew with the team. So I was the more or less a sole developer in the beginning, and then when people join, I knew the code intimately. I feel I knew a lot of parts in it now, so it helps me. Whenever we design something, I'm saying yes, but we can definitely put it here, before this and after that, and a lot of time. But I don't get to code a lot as I would want, but I do a lot of design. So this kind of maybe compensate a bit, because we talk about what we're going to implement, and if it's turned out to be really complex, so I say, why I really want to be in this code review before merging to master. I want, and because it's so interesting and challenging, and that's somehow compensate.
Still one tip for you. Also, go on PagerDuty. Like be part of the duty of trying to fix things when things break, and that keeps you well hands-on, and not in everything, but at least in the stuff that you can do. So also,
this probably doesn't work for everyone, but I take research vacations. I will spend a week on the beach somewhere and code. And for me that works somehow.
That's a great idea, and my VP R&D will hate me after this.
Hi. Considering that artificial intelligence is moving forward a lot, and there's a lot of university research going on all the time, how do you integrate all of that external input while you're busy working on long-term projects? And I have a very specific example in my head, but you can speak to the overall case. But for example, capsules, which was a few months ago, Geoffrey Hinton published a paper about these capsules, and does that impact you at all? Do you play with that? Do you have time to look at it? How do you integrate that? Thanks.
I could start to, so we're not as up to date as we would want to be. That's all. I think that's like a consistent status. Yet we try to publish externally, and when we do, we go to conferences. We also, during the summers, we have interns who are towards finalizing their second degree or third degree, and then they come for 3 months working with us, and that's like opportunity for us to actually explore completely new stuff. We're trying to make their project very encapsulated, very well-defined. They do only this, and then it's an opportunity for us to actually, we say, okay, you start by reading a few papers, and they tell us what they read and what is the latest. So it's not optimal, but it's close.
For us, it's Actually, the big research proposals actually come from ideas that we want to add into the product. So they usually won't come from reading a paper. Maybe it will enable something we haven't thought about. So what we do, we look at it opportunistically. So we build the systems in a way that will now enable us experimentation. So we use TensorFlow. So it's you can do a lot of things with TensorFlow. And it's starting to be more and more. And so unless it's something which is completely out there, and we haven't tried capsules yet, but someone can read a paper and they do it a lot of something which is relevant to his work or her, and then try it. Since the system is built for experimentation, it's not so difficult to create to change the graph and to do something a little bit different. Or very different, whatever, and unless it breaks production, then you also get it to say something about what it does in practice, which is nice. So look at it opportunistically.
I'll add that there's always someone in your team who is passionate about new technologies, who's following all the Twitter posts and so on, and you can use them as ambassadors of new technologies. They will often want to try and experiment at their own free time, which is useful, and then bring it back into the research team.
Yeah, I totally agree about that. And I think actually I'm going to answer an unsolicited question because I think that diversity in a team is really important. And you were saying like having this person, I also have a person who's really into the cutting edge technology and he's always reading blog posts and it adds a lot of value to the team. So I wouldn't want everyone to do that because, you know, there are a lot of other things that need to be done. But I do think diversity is super, super important. Like you need people that can go really in depth. You need people that are just kind of, you know, can do things quickly. So unsolicited advice for team building. And also, and also in terms of like years of experience, I think it's really important to have like a mix of years of experience. So just to get a rounded group, unsolicited advice.
I have lots I also could say about diversity, but to come back to your question about papers, so we have two things we do. One is we have essentially a reading group who's always trying to read. We have one in Israel, we have one in San Diego, and Slack. We're a big company, and so we have a Slack channel where people are just posting like, "Oh, did you see this archive paper?" And sometimes there's discussion, and sometimes it's like a tree falling in the forest, and nobody's there, and nobody cares. But you need to give your team a diverse set of tools, some of them electronic, some of them real-time in-person tools to have these conversations, and then eventually some cream will rise to the top. Okay, another question. You have the microphone right next to you.
That was easy. So I'm Dana, and I'm working in a small startup called Olytics in a healthcare field. My questions for you are, I'm the only data scientist in the company, and right now we're trying to bring another one or both, or I don't know. Did you have to think when you first, maybe in a small startup, when you recruited your first individuals, do you have any tips for me, if it's better to bring a junior or a senior, or it can be beneficial to bring either one?
I would start by thinking, what should this person do once he's hired? Like maybe even go one level deeper and say, okay, what is the project definition that we need? What are the skills in order to execute such a product? And even maybe this can be part of the interview itself, and say, okay, this is the problem that we have. How would you deal with it? And then I believe that a part of the expertise that this person has, and we can find whether it matches your requirement.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot is trying to see what is the most important thing that the company needs, and then asking people when you interview them, what's their dream job? Like, what is it that makes them, like, you know, when they get up in the morning, make them excited to get to work? Because you want to make sure that the two are somehow related for a good fit.
But is it matter to bring in a small startup like a very senior, or it can work both?
I think realistically, and when I joined Taboola, we were a small startup and we were facing the same problem. I was one of 2 data scientists, and realistically, it's you can ask this question, but for small startups, it's really difficult to hire. And the question is, how do you even get them to get to a process with you and to be excited? And I really relate to the idea of being into the hiring process as something which is from the real life of the company, like something which relates to the product and a real problem that you know the answer for, and you know it's complicated, and by that they will get excited. It will be. Of course, everybody will want someone more senior to help them and bring knowledge into the team. But I think the bigger question is, how do you get one, and that's hard.
If you do get one, then hire them, and if you don't want to hire them, then yeah.
Do you have any kind of experience, a good experience with the junior that could develop fastly and provide the project?
So I will answer, and then I think we'll move on to the next, which is I think it's actually more important to have. I look at the difference between doing things right and doing things right now, or and you need different kinds of people. It's another form of diversity, and so you find out who you are, what kind of a person are you, and if you're trying to hire the second data scientist, look for somebody whose skills are complementary to your skills, because what you're eventually building is you're building a team, and it's about the diversity of the team. Don't just hire a carbon copy of what you are. Okay, and so next question. I think we have one here, and then we may have one last one, and then we'll be done.
My question focuses on the challenge. Focuses on challenge of actual focus when you are doing research. So think about experiences when you had a research questions that maybe came from the business side, which is really hard in the sense that on first glance you have no clue how to solve it, and then you choose one of your, let's say, more academically tendency employee and give him this question. How do you manage to give him freedom to do whatever he wants and yet keep him focused so it will actually converge to something?
It's an excellent question. The research that sometimes, and depending on the person, tends to get a little bit undirected, whatever you want to call it, but doesn't converge sometimes, or very slow. I think pairing people to do research together is helpful, because especially if one of the persons is someone who is really let's say like ambitious or want to get things done very quickly, so they won't let that happen. And also, two people are for two people it's easier to see things that do not converge in one, so that helps, I think.
I will add that for creativity, especially for the project that is not well defined, playfulness is very important. So what we like to do is to define a well-defined period of have fun before the project starts. Take a week, a month, as much as is necessary or relevant to the project that you're working on. Do whatever you want, explore different technologies, give me something that doesn't even have to be related to the task at hand, but is somehow related to technology, maybe solve another problem. Basically, have fun. And then in a week, in a month, in a couple of months, fun is slightly limited. Yeah. And let's take the things that you came up with, the creative thoughts, your craft that you've built in your hands by playing with stuff, and let's try and direct it into something that's useful, because starting to talk about how do we want to specifically build a project when researchers don't even have a feeling is very hard.
I'm not sure what exactly you related, but we many times we had a problem of, okay, we have some problem, we see a phenomena that we cannot explain, and this is if you mean this type of problem. So from my experience, we do sit together. We first of all define the problem, and then we raise assumptions. And raising assumption and actually asking questions. Asking questions lead you to look at the data. It may take several days, but then you come up with answers to this question. And then at least, if you don't know the reason for this problem, you know that it's not A, B, C, D. And then you can either continue thinking, like it's easier to think together. And that's something that I like participating in, these discussions around, okay, we have this problem, what do we do? Where can it come from? What do we have to check in order to make sure, I don't know, to find a problem or to exploit it somehow?
So I think one nice tool is, doing a brainstorm, maybe having them present, like, okay, they've somewhat defined the problem and brainstorm within like their team where they feel safe. Say, here are the things that are going on. And a lot of just basic management of, checking back with them and setting limits and being like, trying to direct them, like giving them the freedom to do their thing. Like, okay, yeah, have fun, be creative. But if it doesn't work, like also know how to be like, all right, now let's try this approach, So setting the limits as well, I think is important.
So one question, like, how would you, like, what are the tips to have the best impact, like cross company of a data science team, like how to convince other departments to use your best practices or approach you with questions and like actually like communicate well your tools, your skills, like for other people to approach you and actually to make the whole organization better and data driven, like so.
I'll start. I think a lot is communication. So, if you've done something and it worked well, communicate it. We have like a monthly or bi-monthly like newsletter for our group, and we try to highlight things that were cool. There'll be a happy hour, and once in a while we'll talk about something fun that we did. So a lot is just communicating it, presenting it in the company. Also talking to, let's say you did something that you think is valuable, go and talk to people about it. Tell them about it. Like, it worked for this group, maybe it could also interest you. So kind of marketing your work. But I think, again, when you think that this is something that's valuable for the organization, then it's the right thing to do, is to go and see where else it can be helpful.
I completely agree, and I must say that I really relate to your question, because before I worked in Yahoo, I also worked in HP Labs, and there we did really cool stuff and interesting stuff, but it didn't reach anywhere. And I was so frustrated from this. I said, well, it's such an amazing algorithm. I don't understand how people cannot use it. Now, in retrospect, so of course, communication is the best. Of course, you do have to find the right partners. Not all partners are welcoming new technology, and if they are really stressed, it's kind of understood. One thing that I would suggest is make it easy for them, meaning that it cannot be a pseudocode and you're saying, well, listen, believe me, it works. No, make it as easy as possible for them. You say, I can process any data that you want. I can actually do the work for you, just to show you that it works, and then they will take it from there if you prove them that it works. So that's what I suggest.
So I agree with what was said. They definitely internally communicate and showcase the impact on the product. We also started recently publishing blog posts, and like it sounds like it's something which is very external, and it's almost like to get the name of the company out there. I think it also has a nice impact internally. I don't know, maybe people think that when it's a blog post and it's up on the web, then it's so important. I don't know, maybe something like that. But it's also a nice tool, and it's not a huge effort. It takes a little bit of effort, and so I think it's a nice tool.
Also, get them engaged and excited from the beginning. if you present the question before you started working on it, you get people excited and interested in the outcome. And then you actually have them coming to you to check on the progress of the data project instead of you trying to feed them the results and show them graphs and at the end and convince them that it's good and it's working.
And one thing to add to that, I think inertia is important here, and a lot of times it can be really on the personal level. So you can have one like product manager or one engineer that's really into doing something innovative, and it'll work really well with them, and another team that's very closed. So it's a lot of, you know, understanding like where is this gonna flow and where is it gonna get stopped, and focusing your energies in the places where it really can work, and not fighting kind of uphill battles that don't end up being, you know, working out well.
Okay, we are at the top of our hour. So thank you to Michal, to Orna, to Gil, and to Ariel. Thank you to Samsung Next for hosting us. Thank you to Shir and Uri and Luis, and to the other PyData organizers for bringing us all together. It's been a pleasure talking with you tonight, and good night.